Your move.
What is going on, you guys? Bashtian here, and today I'm coming at you with another amazing episode of Before You Buy. Now, it is going to be the Power of the Elements edition. Now, if you guys have been watching the channel for the past few days, we have been covering Sprite like absolute crazy, but it is not the only potential Tier 1 to Tier 0 deck that is coming out of the Power of the Elements set. Surprisingly, we have two of the most powerful archetypes coming out in this one set, which I definitely can see Power of the Elements being one of the best-selling sets potentially of all time, and that's not an understatement because this deck is absolutely nuts. The deck in question, of course, is going to be the Tier Element strategy coming out of Power of the Elements. Now, the Tier Element strategy has pretty much taken over the OCG meta as the best Tier 0 deck over there after the ban list and after Sprite got hit and all this type of fun stuff that happened all the way over there. Tier Elements has definitely taken over as the best deck of the format. Of course, in order to get it full power, we are still going to have to wait until the Ishizu cards come out later on this year. I believe they're going to be coming out in around October, November in TCG, but it's still something that we have to still wait for. But for now, it is definitely going to be a good idea to go ahead and pick these cards up, even if you're not going to be playing the deck now, because it will become one of the best decks of the format for sure in just a few months' time. If you guys enjoyed these videos, go ahead and leave a like down below, comment down below which deck you guys want to see in the Before You Buy. If I missed one, again, let me know in the comment section. Subscribe for more so you don't miss it. And without further ado, guys, Before You Buy, 3 pros, 3 cons, let's go. Alright guys, so as I was going to be starting off with the pros for the Tier Elements. So Tier Elements pro number 1, we have right here. There we go. It's versatility. So what I love about Tier Elements, is phenomenal versatility it has, because also, as if you guys do not know already, Tier Elements, how they work is when they're sent to the graveyard by a card effect, whether it's yourselves or your opponents, they get the immediate effect to go ahead and fusion summon using itself and another monster or monsters in the graveyard by shuffling them into the deck, which is absolutely just insane, because nowhere on the card text does it say you can only special summon Tier Elements monsters, or you can only special summon. There's no restriction. It just says fusion summon using at least this card, and that's the only restriction, which I think is absolutely insane, because you can really go into El Shaddai Window. You could go into give me another broken card, Predaplant card. Draco Stapelia. There we go. That's what we're talking about. I mean, if you playing cards like King of the Swamp or any type of fusion alternative in your graveyard as well, you can also use that when it comes to your fusion summon as well, which is absolutely insane. You can pretty much just load up your extra deck with a whole bunch of fusion monsters, one of the best fusion monsters in the entire game. Just throw them in your extra deck, and as long as they don't require a specific monster, you are able to go ahead and make this without a doubt absolutely insane. Pro number 2 that I absolutely love about the Tier Element strategy is its overall grind game ability. That deck has is absolutely just unheard of. So what I mean by this essentially is that, I believe I mentioned this during the versatility stage, but a big pro of this is that in order to fusion summon, the Tier Elements monsters are going to go ahead and activate, of course, when they're sent to the graveyard, but they also shuffle themselves back into the deck along with any other fusion materials you have in your hand, graveyard, or on your field as well. You just shuffle them back into the deck in order for you to reuse them later down the line, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you're pretty much putting your entire graveyard, I should say, back into your deck, as overall just part of the summoning mechanic of this deck is absolutely just insane. So you never run out of materials moving forward, so you could theoretically continuously just fusion summon for over 40 turns and still be good to go. The only thing that you would need is just a way to go ahead and shuffle back all your fusion monsters as well that you're potentially not using for your Tier Elements. But this can go a long time, especially if you're going to be playing cards like Pot of Avarice, cards that immediately will allow you to gain advantage of having cards in the graveyard. I think it'd be huge for the Tearlaments strategy to go ahead and potentially think about this as well. It's a little bit of a stretch, I understand. We haven't seen Part of Avarice been played competitively in a very long time, but this could potentially do it. I mean, essentially all these cards do are send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard, and of course the second you hit a Tearlament, it all goes back in again. So I could potentially see this maybe being mixed with like a Light Sworns or maybe Paleozoic. That'd be a pretty cool matchup as well to go ahead and see these two together. Seeing the Tearlaments fusion monsters in general being backed up with a Toad, that's something that could be absolutely just amazing to see. So overall, the grind game is absolutely amazing. Lastly, guys, is just the adaptability of this deck is just unheard of, essentially. So what I love about the adaptability of it is that it has a lot of space for non-engine. Now, as I mentioned before, the Tearlaments monsters are going to be shuffling themselves back into the deck regardless, so you really should not have to worry about decking out, as that is unlikely to happen just because of the way the deck plays. Can that still happen? Yes, of course. Is it likely? A little bit less than other decks, essentially just because, again, the recursion, the grind game, we already spoke about that, but the adaptability of it, because you had this constant recursion, it allows for a lot of non-engine cards to be played in your deck. So you can mix this with the punk strategy. You can go ahead and play a whole bunch of hand traps, things like, things that will continue to extend and grow among your plays. So another card that's going to be really fantastic for this deck is going to be the Chaotic, I forgot what the card's name is called, Chaos Ruler of the Chaotic Magical Dragon. Oh, there you go. So potentially using the punk strategy to synchro into this guy and excavate 5 cards from the top of your deck is going to be absolutely ridiculous. There's also, I believe, it's called there's some trap card that also sends top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard, which I think is absolutely just insane. Something that could potentially be played with this as well. If you're gonna be playing that card, I believe it's a normal trap card. You might be able to go ahead and lean this more in the Paleozoic route. And then play maybe some normal trap searchers, so potentially like Lilith, Lady of Lament from the Layer of Darkness structure deck. And I'm just theorizing at this point, but these are all ideas that could potentially become viable. So you don't know until you try, right? So that's something that I think is really cool and amazing, just the overall adaptability. So overall, the 3 pros we got for the strategies: overall grind game, the adaptability, and versatility of the Tearlaments are definitely going to be something that is setting this deck completely aside from the rest when it comes to the Power of the Elements sets and this upcoming next Yu-Gi-Oh format. Alright guys, so we've gone over a lot of the pros. Now let's hit up some of the cons for this deck. First con number 1. Let's go ahead and call it that. It's the heavy reliance on fusion summoning. But you have to fusion summon during your opponent's turn in order to have any type of interruption for them. So what I've read so far, if I'm reading that correctly, I mean, as far as Tearlaments goes, we can go ahead and read them together. I'm going to go ahead and read Kaleido Heart. Cannot be used as a fusion material. If this card is special summoned or an aqua monster is sent to the graveyard by a card effect while this card is in the field, you can target one card your opponent controls, shuffle it back into the deck. If this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon this card. You can only, and if you do, send a Tearlaments card from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use that effect once per turn. Great. The other one is going to be Tearlaments Kitkalos. So that one, if this card is special summoned, you can take one Tearlaments card from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. You can target one monster you control, special summon one Tearlaments monster from your hand or graveyard, and if you do, send that targeted monster to the graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard or a card effect, send the top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So this deck has absolutely no in-archetype interruption for your opponent. There's no quick effects, nothing like that. Nothing can go ahead and lead you to something that would be able to go ahead and negate your opponent's effects, and that's why it's kind of forcing its hand when it comes to the versatility and adaptability, because you have to go ahead and play out of engine support and out of engine boss monsters in order to be able to make this deck a lot more viable. So what I mean by that, not necessarily just interruptions. Yes, I mean they have the capability, very likely to go ahead and fusion summon their opponent's turn, but it's not going to be nearly as common and nearly as successful. So you can still play cards like, if you're gonna make it so with Shaddolls, Shaddol Fusion, you can use cards like Branded. You can mix it with the Branded Fusion as well to go ahead and fusion some Mirror Jade, potentially. A Super Polymerization is going to be absolutely huge, especially with the brand new fusion spells coming out. I believe Power of the Elements, forget what it's called, but I'll have it right here for you guys. Yeah, I got you on that one. But yeah, just overall inability to interact with your opponent during your opponent's turn, unless you're able to fusion summon. And there's the fact as well that Gigantic Sprite prevents you from summoning anything that's above a level 2, rank 2, link 2 during that turn. So you can't even fusion summon after they've done the Gigantic Sprite effect, because then essentially you won't be able to summon out any of your fusion monsters. So that's a really big hindrance on the deck itself, especially coming out on the same set as Sprite. If this deck would have been coming out maybe 2 or 3 months down the line, I think it would have been perfect with these Shizu cards. Go ahead and mesh it all together as one. But you know, I know Konami can't always time everything, or maybe this is their master plan, you know, who knows. Alright guys, so con number 2 that I'm not too big a fan of this on is that it is extremely susceptible to hand traps. Not just this, but its overall graveyard reliance. So hand traps and graveyard reliance I'm gonna go ahead and put in one con, essentially. So alright, so let's go ahead and get this started. What are some of the best hand traps in the current format? I want to say Dimension Shifter is definitely one of them. Played in Floowandereeze, main decked in Floowandereeze. DD Crow, main decked in Floowandereeze, again one of the more popular decks of the format. What's another rising deck? Marincess. Do they play Abyss Dweller? I'm sure they can. I mean, so can this deck, don't get me wrong, but it's different when you're using it and it's being used against you. So the overall reliance on the graveyard is something that is not necessarily detrimental to most decks, but a deck that specifically needs the graveyard to do anything, it's already throwing up red flags for me right off the bat. So you're gonna have to go ahead and discard one of the Tearlaments monsters that you can discard when your opponent's fusion activates a effect or something. You can go ahead and fusion summon through there, but you can't fusion summon if you don't have anything in the graveyard. So it's kind of useless at that point, or if you don't have another target as well in your field or hand as well. So that's where I really start to take issue with this deck, is that its overall graveyard reliance is something that is subpar, I want to say, to a degree. I mean, there's plenty of other graveyard reliant decks out there, just none of them that are top tier at the current moment. I've been talking about Paleozoic for a while now, I don't know why, but you know, it is what it is. It's graveyard reliant deck, also trap based deck. You have Lightsworn, you have Zombie. Zombie has seen a little bit of play here and there, but not too much. Overall, I think graveyard reliant decks is definitely not the format for them, just because you have way too many hand traps right now. And not just hand traps, but so many effects, you just negate everything in the graveyard or just banish everything in the graveyard. So I don't think it's the best move. And that's something, I mean, if it does come into effect where this deck is actually really good, you could start seeing cards like I believe Gravekeepers and Necro Valley would actually be a good counter, because I believe Necro Valley would stop this from activating as well, so this is moving a card from the graveyard. So that's definitely something to go ahead and keep in mind as well. Overall, I think that reliance is extremely weak. Now, also the fact that it struggles against hand traps quite a bit, just overall. Not necessarily Jordan Lockbird or Nibiru, because you're not going to be summoning or searching out too much. But Ash is huge against this deck, especially if you Ash like a Foolish Burial, you know, things like that essentially, or if you affect Valor their normal summon, that can be a huge hindrance to them as well, because that's the main way they're going to be able to get cards into the graveyard as well. So there's just a lot of holes in its game as far as that aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh is concerned. And then the last con I have for the deck is just I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. It's just a very slow starter. At least, I mean, yes, there are multiple variants out there, some a little bit faster than others, but for the most part, it's still a bit of a slower paced deck. Yes, you can fusion summon a whole bunch of times if you have the right cards, but overall, I want to say more of a slower paced deck than a slower starter, which I just worry about it being able to keep up with the current format as well. I mean, Sprite, it summons out a whole bunch of monsters real quick and really easily as well. Even Sword Soul is pretty quick about being able to get a Baron and a Shishao on board. Branded can snowball extremely fast as well. Branded Despia, I mean, which would be still a little bit faster than this. I mean, Fluandries, if you let that first normal summon go off, they're going clean the entire rest of the way. So it's just Drytron. Don't even get me started on Drytron. I mean, absolutely insane. Dragon Link as well. That would put them in a similar category. So that's another one that's left on the back burner as well. I don't think we have too many slow decks that are at that level yet. I would potentially put this at the same level as like a Eldritch because they're both slower paced decks. Even though Eldritch is considered one of the better decks of the format, it's not really one that I'm really going to be necessarily preparing for as much as I would other decks. For example, I have to prepare against Drytron, Dragon Link, all the other decks that I previously mentioned. So that's another one that I want to go ahead and just leave off of right now. It's just a very slow starter, but that does not mean that they are bad cards to go ahead and pick up. As I mentioned earlier in the video, more Shizu support is going to be coming out here in the next few months, near future. So it is, I believe, a good idea to go ahead and pick these cards up while they are slightly inexpensive. Just like it would be for most decks. I mean, you want to go ahead and plan ahead, not plan for the now per se. And we've seen this a lot in Live Twins. Live Twins was extremely inexpensive. Everyone says it's a good idea to go ahead and pick them up. Those who didn't, now you're, those who did, now reaping the benefits because everything's tripled in price. Aluber, when it first came out, was a very inexpensive card, and then before the reprint, it skyrocketed, I believe, to $120 per copy. Guardian Chimera is a big one as well. I think it was $17-18, and it shot up to $60-70 at its highest. So you definitely want to go ahead and pick these cards up sooner rather than later. I would wait maybe 2 to 3 weeks for because right now they're just pre-sale value at the time. I know there's going to be a lot of players that are going to want to play this immediately, but overall, when it comes to ranking the decks coming out of Power of the Elements, it goes Sprites, Tearlaments, and whatever other trash is in there. I think the Vernalizer Fairy deck is in there. I don't really even want to make a before you buy because it's just going to be straight cons. Yes, I've seen it used as an engine before, as a consistency piece for other decks. But it itself, I mean, if it's something that you guys want to see, by all means, I'll go ahead and do it. We can roast a deck together, or maybe I'll be surprised or pleasantly surprised, I should say, by some amazing pros for the deck. But again, let me know what you guys want to see in the comment section down below. For those of you guys who have already liked the video, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for smashing the like button, smash that subscribe button as well. If you guys do enjoy these videos, guys, we're going to be preparing a lot for Power of the Elements coming up in just about 2 weeks. I'm not sure exactly when exactly this video is going to come out, but within the next 2 weeks it's going to be coming out. So if you guys want to stay on top of it, go ahead and make sure you subscribe for more videos, guys, and I'll go and see you in the next one.